Today we're doing something a little different. We are moving past the usual history books, past the simplified myths.
We really are.
We're taking a singular focus on a really stunning document. The man who lit the world, Tesla's confession.
And this isn't just another biography of Nikola Tesla, the eccentric inventor.
No, not at all. This is his final, unfiltered, and I have to say, deeply moving personal testimony.
It feels like it was left for us, for the future, to finally understand his internal world.
Right, to set the record straight on his life, his work, which completely changed the world, and, maybe most painfully, the haunting mistakes he made along the way.
And I think our mission here, guided by these excerpts, is to just tear through all that mystique that surrounds him.
Move past the lightning bolts and the legends.
Exactly. And find the brilliant, but also deeply flawed human being whose vision absolutely defines our daily lives today.
We have so much to unpack here. I mean,
Yeah.
This is the man who truly invented the 20th and 21st centuries.
And that framing is so critical because Tesla's opening statement in this whole confession is, it's a direct challenge to you, the listener.
How so?
He explicitly rejects that popular image of him as the wizard or the mad scientist. He just demands that we accept him as a man.
Just a man.
A man who shaped civilization, yes, but who paid an almost unimaginable personal price for it.
And when you think about it, I mean, every humming current in the walls of your home right now,
Every piece of tech you rely on.
it's all running on the materialized imagination of this one person. We are, and this is not an exaggeration, we're literally living inside his realized dream.
So the core mission for us as we go through this is to find the answer to the question, what did the man who gave us the modern world really wish he had told us about the cost of that gift?
It's a heavy one, but it's essential for understanding not just him, but us, our present moment.
It really is.
And he doesn't waste any time. The entry point he gives us is immediate, and it's stunningly relevant.
Yeah.
He opens by telling you, the listener, that the very machines he dreamed of are likely in your pocket right now. You're probably holding one.
And his currents are quietly humming in the walls around you.
He's confirming we're living in his dream, which is just a staggering thought. But he insists, he's very clear on this. We can't celebrate the dream without acknowledging the immense personal sacrifices
The terrible mistakes.
and the profound, isolating loneliness that dream demanded of him. He sets this incredibly poignant, almost dramatic tone right from the start.
He's making sure that before we rush to celebrate the genius, we first have to hear about the devastating price tag.
Exactly. So let's delve into where that genius and that future burden truly began.
Let's do it.
The typical narrative about Tesla, it always kicks off with the big stuff. The patents, the math, the AC motor,
The rivalry with Edison in New York
right? The flashy stuff.
Yeah.
This confession, this personal history, it just throws that whole beginning out.
completely rewrites it.
It insists the true foundation of his genius started way earlier, rooted firmly in his childhood in Smiljan.
And it centers on two key figures and just one unforgettable moment of wonder.
So if we really want to unpack the origin story of our entire power system, we can't start with lab blueprints. He says we have to start with the most important inventor in his life, his mother, Nikola Tesla.
Yes.
So what does the confession actually tell us about her? What was her influence?
Well, it just radically reframes where his intellect came from. It moves it away from, formal schooling and points it directly toward this practical, innate mechanical brilliance.
So not from books.
Not from books at all. Tesla states it unequivocally. He says his mother, Juka, was the real inventor in the family.
Okay.
And this is the kicker. She had zero formal education, couldn't read a single science book.
Wow. So where did her genius come from? Was it just intuitive?
Totally intuitive, almost elemental. He describes her as having the sharpest mind he ever encountered. She had this phenomenal, almost magical ability to just manufacture complex mechanical appliances out of nothing.
Out of nothing. What does that even mean?
It means she was leveraging this inherent understanding of physics, of tension, of material structure without the math.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, he gives a very specific one. He talks about how she knew exactly how to weave wool to make it stronger. It wasn't just a craft for her. It was this logical, pre-mathematical process. She would produce fabrics and tools that were just superior to anything made by formal artisans.
So he's saying his whole way of thinking, the intricate logic.
The weaving of energy systems and circuits. He traces all of it directly back to just watching and absorbing her innate mechanical comprehension. She literally laid the logical framework for everything he would later build.
That's incredible. She provides the blueprint for his mind.
Exactly, even if she couldn't provide the mathematical proof.
So you have this deep foundational logic from his mother's genius.
Eh.
And then, he says, it was ignited by an experience that, honestly, biographers usually just treat as a cute little story. The cat, Mekak. He considered this a pivotal, life-altering moment. He describes it so vividly. You know, a young kid sitting with his father at dusk, just stroking the cat's back.
And he sees this sheet of light, feels the crackle of static.
Right, and his father just explains it away. Oh, that's just electricity, like in a storm.
Yeah.
But Tesla's mind goes somewhere else entirely.
Somewhere much bigger.
Yeah, it becomes metaphysical for him. He asks this burning question: is nature a gigantic cat? If so, who strokes its back?
That is not a normal kid's question.
Not at all. It's not about friction. It's an ontological question. It's about the fundamental, unseen forces that govern the entire cosmos.
And that question, it never left him.
Never. He confesses that this single inquiry just propelled all of his work relentlessly. He even admits it often pushed him to the edge of madness because he was always seeking that cosmic hand behind what we can see.
The invisible hand of the universe.
That's what defined his entire life, that one moment.
But, you know, for every force that's pushing him toward that light of discovery, there was also this profound shadow tragedy.
Right, something that forged the isolation that would eventually, consume him.
We have to talk about the lasting psychological impact of his older brother Dane's death.
He's very explicit about this, isn't he? Not just about the event, but what it did to him.
He is. He states flat out that Dane was perhaps more brilliant than I, which confirms he was always living in the shadow of this idealized, lost older brother.
And Dane died young. An accident with a horse, and Tesla saw it happen.
He witnessed it firsthand, and he says that loss just broke something essential inside of him. It carved a hollow space in his chest that he then desperately tried to fill with work.
This nonstop, hyper-focused effort.
And the guilt was made worse because he felt really acutely that his parents, in their grief, only saw him as the surviving lesser son, not the desired brilliant son they had lost.
And if you track that psychological trauma, that intense, unresolved need to prove himself,
it explains everything.
It absolutely explains the profound isolation and the strange social habits that defined his later life.
The need for control, for perfection.
Right, not just in his lab, but everywhere. His later need for meticulous order, the intense germophobia, the bizarre phobias like of pearl earrings.
Things that high society just saw as him being strange.
But the confession suggests they were extensions of his need to control the chaos from that early trauma. It was, and he says this, his survival mechanism.
But his social withdrawal wasn't him being aloof. It was a psychological necessity.
A desperate one to manage the pain and that incessant internal pressure to fill Dane's space with these world-changing achievements.
It makes his eccentricities feel, well, not eccentric at all, just heartbreakingly human.
Exactly.
So as we move from the trauma of his youth to the actual execution of his genius, the source reveals that his engineering method was just. It was truly radical, almost unbelievable compared to his peers.
Yeah, you think of Edison, right? Surrounded by mountains of prototypes, sketches, just this messy physical process of trial and error.
Endless trial and error. Tesla's process was the complete opposite. It was defined by the total absence of physical prototypes.
And no paper. Not until the very end when the patent application was drafted.
Which brings us to the core of his genius. How did he actually engineer the future so perfectly inside his own head? I mean, running simulations and building machinery without a blueprint or even a scrap of paper for calculations?
He describes it with such clarity it just stops you cold. He called his approach a complete rejection of that standard trial and error method.
He had contempt for it.
Total contempt. He called it a waste of time and material.
So what was his method?
His genius was total mental fabrication. It was like an internal, high-fidelity virtual reality. He didn't brainstorm toward a device. He saw the machines, and this is a quote, fully built, spinning, inside his mind from the moment of conception.
The level of detail must have been staggering.
It's what's so hard to comprehend. He explains he could conduct complete physical testing entirely in his imagination.
What, like a simulation?
Exactly. He details mentally running a massive turbine or a complex motor for weeks on end. He'd be in there, inspecting it for friction, watching the bearings wear down over time, listening for the exact frequency of vibration, adjusting the balance of components.
All in his skull.
All inside his own skull. He'd run the simulation until it failed, fix the flaw, and then run it again. And again, iteratively, until it was perfect. This was not daydreaming.
No, this was engineering in 4 dimensions.
Precisely.
And that mental testing was so thorough, so exact, that he claims and this is an incredible claim, that by the time he finally built the device in the lab,
When the patent was filed and the parts were physically put together,
it worked exactly as I had imagined, always.
always. Think about the fidelity required for that. It means his internal model of physics, of material science, of mechanics, was essentially perfect. It needed no physical reality check.
And this process, which everyone celebrates as pure, unadulterated genius.
He called it a curse.
Chillingly, yeah, a curse. It really highlights the terrifying, exhausting cost of keeping that mental machinery turning nonstop.
And it was nonstop. That's the thing. He describes this brain that never turned off, just constantly functioning at a pitch that bordered on painful.
And this manifested physically, right, as this debilitating sensory overload.
Oh, yeah. He talks about suffering from blinding flashes of light and these intense, unavoidable visions of the future.
Visions that would just interrupt his daily life.
Violently. Even during simple moments like sitting down for dinner or just trying to sleep, he was just receiving data constantly.
It sounds like his brain was just always tuned in.
Always. Which is why he saw himself as a prisoner of my own imagination.
Yeah.
He was trapped by this nonstop flood of ideas and sensory input, unable to find any silence.
And this provides that crucial context for his later extreme isolation.
It was a desperate attempt to manage a perpetually overloaded system, to find a quiet space where the universe wasn't constantly broadcasting its secrets directly into his head.
And it was this relentless internal intensity that really fueled the conflict that cemented his place in history.
The War of Currents.
The battle over AC versus DC. But this confession, it's designed to redefine that whole conflict. He peels back the layers to move beyond that simple, superheroes and villains story.
Right. He clarifies that Thomas Edison wasn't some mustache-twirling monster.
No, he was first and foremost a businessman, protecting a massive, established financial enterprise.
So the conflict wasn't just personal. It was systemic. It was driven by technology and investment.
And it was a battle that fundamentally defined the parameters of the modern world we live in.
Okay, so the popular story gives us this simple good versus evil thing. Tesla, the pure scientist, versus Edison, the greedy villain who's, electrocuting elephants to scare people about AC.
Right.
And Tesla corrects this. He says Edison was just protecting his empire. But that still leaves this huge gap in most people's understanding. What was the fundamental, non-negotiable technical difference between DC and AC?
And why was Tesla's system absolutely essential for the future we now inhabit?
Exactly. We need to get the mechanics here to really appreciate the sacrifice he made later.
Well, the difference is fundamentally about control over transmission. It really boils down to the physics of efficiency and reach, the difference between a short leash and global freedom.
A short leash, I like that. So Edison's DC direct current.
It transmitted power in one direction, but it was incredibly inefficient over any kind of distance because of resistance in the wires.
So it lost power.
Constantly. To maintain the voltage you needed, you had to have a generating power plant roughly every 2 miles.
Every 2 miles, that's insane.
It is, and Tesla describes this limitation brilliantly as a tether. It bound power generation to this hyper-local distribution model, and Edison, having poured millions into these local DC stations, was obviously fighting to protect that system.
So the revolutionary thing about Tesla's AC alternating current was how it broke that tether. The key was the transformer, right?
The transformer changed everything. AC could rapidly switch direction, and crucially, a transformer could step the voltage up dramatically for transmission.
And why did that matter so much?
It's all about the physics of heat loss. Resistance causes heat loss, and that loss is proportional to the square of the current.
I squared R, for anyone who remembers their physics class.
Exactly. So by using the AC transformer, Tesla could step the voltage up to extremely high levels, say 100,000 volts, while stepping the current way down.
High voltage, low current.
And that minimizes heat loss, allowing power to travel for hundreds of miles efficiently through relatively thin wires. That is the definition of freedom.
It enabled long-distance transmission.
Famously enabling power to be sent from the massive hydroelectric generators at Niagara Falls all the way to Buffalo and beyond.
So without AC in the transformer, every single town would have needed its own smoky, inefficient power station.
Every town. So Tesla makes it really clear his role wasn't just fighting a rival, it was about protecting the future. A future that absolutely required global, efficient, long-distance power that DC simply could not deliver.
It was a non-negotiable technical requirement for civilization as we know it.
Absolutely.
And that technical necessity leads us directly to one of the most defining and, I think, painful moments of Tesla's entire life. And it involves George Westinghouse.
His champion, the man who backed AC.
But then Westinghouse faced this crippling financial crisis because of Tesla's royalties. And we should stress, that contract would be worth billions today.
Billions with a B.
Can you just detail the choice Tesla faced and the staggering, almost unbelievable financial sacrifice he made to save the future of power?
I mean, this moment is the high watermark of his commitment to the work over his own fortune. Westinghouse, who had licensed Tesla's foundational patents, the AC motor, the transformer systems, he was in a severe financial crisis.
His backers were getting nervous.
They were pressuring him to restructure the company, and they saw that the royalties in Tesla's contract, which were per unit of power generated, were mathematically going to bankrupt the company as AC started to scale up.
So Tesla's looking at a contract that is a golden ticket. Generations of wealth.
Billions in passive income. And the dilemma was agonizing. If he insists on keeping that contract, Westinghouse fails. The company goes under.
And the dream of AC power dies with it. He gets smothered by DC and financial collapse.
And his decision was immediate and profound. He chose to tear at the contract. He relinquished all his future rights. He chose the triumph of the technology over his personal, generational wealth.
It's an almost unimaginable sacrifice.
Yeah.
And while he chose the work over the wealth, the confession is brutally honest about the toll that took on him later.
Oh, absolutely. He specifically references the crushing irony of his poverty against the global success of his system.
He mentions his later years eating meager meals in the Waldorf Astoria, unable to pay my bill.
While the entire world is running on his unpaid labor, the contrast is just staggering.
It is. And the implication of that sacrifice, which he lays out directly for you, the listener, is probably the most powerful takeaway from this whole section.
He says that by tearing up that contract, he personally subsidized the foundation of our entire infrastructure.
He paid for your lights, for the power that runs your computer, for the AC that cools your home.
For the cheap electricity used in every factory. He sacrificed his billions so the world could have AC power for a reasonable price.
It just fundamentally reframes the story of his life. He goes from being an eccentric inventor to a profound, self-sacrificing architect who literally subsidized the cost of modern civilization.
It's a debt we never even knew we owed. So after the War of Currents, after that immense financial sacrifice, Tesla just immediately launches into projects that must have seemed like pure science fiction at the time.
Right, culminating in that massive, unfinished tower at Wardenclyffe on Long Island.
And that tower is almost exclusively misunderstood today. Everyone just thinks it was about free energy.
But Tesla corrects this in the confession. He clarifies he wasn't just trying to distribute power, he was trying to build a global nervous system.
So can you elaborate on that? What specific forward-thinking tech was he actually trying to build in 1901? It sounds like a lot more than just electricity.
Oh, it was a blueprint for everything we call the digital age. The scope of Wardenclyffe was just mind-boggling. It anticipated the next century completely.
So what was the core concept?
He saw the Earth itself as a giant electrical resonator, a conductor. And his plan was to pump energy into the ground, into the very Earth itself, which could then be retrieved anywhere on the planet.
But not just power, right?
Right, that was just one component. The true aim was a universal transfer of information. Music, instantaneous stocks, quotes, pictures, and crucially, a global telephone system.
Connecting every point on the planet wirelessly.
And instantaneously. He intended to broadcast the world's knowledge.
That sounds suspiciously like a description of the internet and Wi-Fi, but over 100 years before they existed.
Exactly. He asks you, the listener, directly in the confession. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
He was trying to build your internet, your global communication network, the underlying tech for Wi-Fi, the entire global infrastructure that defines modern life in 1901.
Using the ionosphere and the Earth's own electrical charge?
Yes. And he calls the failure to complete Wardenclyffe, due to financial problems and J.P. Morgan pulling his funding.
The great tragedy of his life.
The great tragedy. He saw the future so clearly, held the mechanism to build it in his hands, and then just watched it all crumble because the world and his financiers just couldn't grasp the value of invisible global information transfer yet.
Another crucial moment of historical frustration for him involves the invention of radio.
Oh, yeah.
Guglielmo Marconi is the name everyone knows. He got the Nobel Prize for it. Tesla addresses this with a very specific, sharp clarity. How does he cut through that controversy?
He just confronts it head on, with a brief, unequivocal claim that leaves absolutely no room for doubt. His perspective is simply, I invented it.
That's it.
That's it. The confession states plainly that Marconi used 17 of Tesla's existing patents, specifically his tuning circuits, his oscillator, the high-frequency transformers.
The core components.
The science and the hardware were Tesla's. But what's maybe more revealing is his initial reaction to the theft. A colleague, Otis Pond, pointed out that Marconi was getting the jump on him.
And what did Tesla say?
He basically just shrugged it off. He said, "Marconi is a good fellow. Let him continue. He is using my patents."
That is a staggering portrait of a mind so far ahead he couldn't be bothered to protect what he'd already done.
He was too focused on the next great thing to fight the legal battle for the last one. But in retrospect, he acknowledges the immense cost of that attitude.
I bet he does.
He admits, looking back, that he was too forgiving. And he laments that history rewards those with the best publicists, not always those with the first idea.
Which is a profoundly relevant observation for our age of media and spin.
Absolutely. The power of PR can often just overshadow the scientific truth. And while the U.S. Supreme Court did eventually uphold Tesla's patent precedents.
Decades later, long after he was dead.
Right. The damage was done. Marconi had the commercial framework, he had the accolades, and Tesla was left in the shadow of this controversy. A consequence he directly links to his own failure to engage in that tedious, necessary fight for recognition.
Just another sacrifice on the pile.
So if we could just transport Nikola Tesla into our world today, over a century after his peak, he'd see his blueprint realized everywhere, but he would also immediately see our failures.
Our ethical compromises.
Let's start with the triumph he identifies. The realization of the world brain he was writing about decades ago. When he looks at modern life, what's the one thing that impresses him most?
It's the absolute realization of that global invisible information network. He gets it instantly.
How does he describe it?
He notes seeing people walking down the street staring into small glass rectangles, our smartphones.
And he understands what that means.
Immediately. He understands that this small device means you, the listener, have access to virtually all human knowledge instantly in your hand.
Which is something we just take for granted.
Completely. But for him, it confirms his earlier concepts of the world brain. It validates that we are literally living inside the complex blueprint he foresaw 100 years ago.
The invisible, universal flow of information he dreamed of at Wardenclyffe is now the most visible, persistent activity of modern humans.
He finds a profound vindication in that.
But despite that staggering triumph of connectivity, the success of the Wardenclyffe idea, Tesla then offers this absolutely fierce critique of how we use energy, the topic that defined his whole career.
And he finds our current power infrastructure, even though it runs on his AC,
to be fundamentally barbaric. Why? Why would the man who gave us global power find our energy practices so shocking and illogical?
His critique is really rooted in his core philosophy, that the universe is just a boundless source of energy, and relying on finite resources is inherently backward.
He warned us about this, didn't he?
He did. He told the world a century ago that civilizations rise and fall based on how they use energy, and he is utterly dismayed by our continued reliance on fossil fuels.
Specifically on combustion.
Yes. He views the practice of digging black sludge out of the ground to burn it for heat as completely barbaric.
Why that word barbaric?
Because it relies on consuming limited resources, creating pollution, and using these inefficient, heat-dependent processes when he already demonstrated methods to tap into the environment's own boundless electrical potential.
It's tapping into the invisible energy of the cosmos.
Exactly. He sees our persistent delay in shifting to non-combustion renewables as just baffling, a failure of imagination and will, because we've ignored the very lesson his life proved.
So his advice for us now is pretty direct.
Urgent and simple. He connects his 19th century vision directly to our 21st century environmental reality.
Yeah.
Move to renewables, stop delaying.
It's a powerful mandate. But the conversation doesn't stop with energy. He also addresses the future of technology that is now dominating our conversations. Artificial intelligence.
And this is crucial because he has authority here.
Right. In 1898, he built the first operational robot, that remote-controlled boat. So how does the inventor of remote command define the immense power and the danger of modern AI?
He draws this direct, cautionary parallel between AI and his own life's work. He calls current AI the new electricity.
The new electricity.
And he speaks from the authority of having built the teleautomaton in 1898. He understands the profound implications of machines that can act on their own.
So what's his main point?
He emphasizes that AI, as this raw intellectual force, has no morality built into its code. It's a tool, not a conscience. In his view, AI acts purely as a mirror.
A mirror. What does he mean by that?
He warns that if humanity approaches it with greed, with short-term gain, with indifference, it will reflect destruction back at us. But if we approach it with pure, disciplined curiosity, focused on solving massive problems, it offers the potential to reach the stars.
The core of his warning, then, is that the machine itself is neutral.
Exactly. Drawn from his long experience with the raw power of electricity, his terrifying reminder is that a machine does not care if you live or die.
So the most critical message for us, the listener, is one of responsibility and control.
Humanity must remain the master of the machine, or the machine will master us. The intellectual force must always, always remain subservient to the human moral compass. So after dissecting his monumental science and analyzing his legacy with this clinical precision, Tesla shifts. In this final section, he shifts to his most painful and human topic, his deep, abiding, total regrets.
Despite achieving breakthroughs that benefit every single person listening right now, the personal cost for him was absolute.
So what specific price did his devotion to invention ultimately exact from the man who lit the modern world?
It was the price of loneliness, which he details with just devastating honesty.
He admits he consciously pushed away everyone who genuinely cared for him. Friends, colleagues, potential partners.
He did, because he mistakenly believed, under the relentless pressure of his own genius, that love was a distraction.
He chose the lab over the living room.
Every time. Opting to be alone in his intense focus. And his final truth on this is a really sobering and necessary warning for any modern innovator or, any goal-oriented person.
What's the warning?
He wishes he could tell them that no invention is worth complete loneliness.
Wow.
He highlights the cruel irony of global recognition versus personal emptiness by saying that the Nobel Prize, the ultimate symbol of validation.
It does not hold your hand when you are sick.
It's a profound, heartbreaking lament for the absence of just simple human connection at the end of a world-defining career.
And this profound loneliness, it manifests so powerfully in that incredibly poignant and often misunderstood story about the pigeons he fed later in his life.
Right. It's often used to just portray him as eccentric or, a quirky old man.
But in the confession, it becomes the source of his greatest, most painful realization about the true meaning of love and sacrifice. Something he missed his whole life.
Can you share the details of that relationship? The one that provided his only true comfort at the end.
He recounts in detail the years he spent feeding the pigeons in New York, and he confirms they truly became his only true friends toward the end, when all other human connections had just withered away.
And he singles out one in particular.
He does. A unique white pigeon with gray tips on her wings. And the confession he makes about this bird is staggering in its emotional depth. He says, "I loved that bird as a man loves a woman."
This wasn't eccentricity. This was the last, purest vessel for his immense, unexpressed need for connection.
For emotional investment. And when that particular pigeon eventually died, he says, "Something light went out of my eyes."
And that was the moment.
That was the moment of complete, painful realization that defined his final regrets. He had given everything to humanity and kept nothing for myself.
It's the final, tender, and most heartbreaking piece of the puzzle that truly humanizes this mythic figure.
It really is. And given the magnitude of his life, his sacrifice, and his mistakes, he leaves 3 exceptionally clear instructions for the future generation.
For the dreamers, the engineers, the misfits who will follow him.
And they aren't technical instructions. They're philosophical and practical pieces of advice, designed to ensure humanity uses his legacy wisely and avoids his greatest personal failures. So, what are these 3 rules for progress?
His final advice? It focuses on preserving the capacity for fragile innovation and actively challenging stagnation wherever it appears. First, he instructs the world to protect your thinkers.
What does he mean by that?
He warns that innovators and people who are tuned into those unseen frequencies are often fragile. They can be easily crushed by the weight of the world's indifference and its apathy.
Okay, so that's number 1.
Second, he demands that you, the listener, question everything. He explicitly labels dogma, whether it's scientific, political, or social, as the death of progress.
Stagnation sets in the moment we stop asking the hard questions.
Exactly. And finally, his third rule is to focus on the unseen. He passionately insists that our current, shallow obsession with the material world just blinds us to the greatest invisible forces that truly govern the universe.
Gravity, electricity, magnetism.
Love, and vibration. His ultimate instruction for anyone seeking true insight into the cosmos, the key phrase that encapsulates his entire life's philosophy, is simple.
If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
That's his final message. Hashtag stayed outro.
You know, this entire confession provides such a critical and necessary shift in perspective. Tesla wasn't a myth. He wasn't some magician. He was a flawed, brilliant, and deeply sacrificial man who built the very infrastructure we rely on today.
And he saw our collective potential, our access to that world brain.
He spent his life wrestling with immense forces we still barely understand, and he ultimately gave us the power, literally and metaphorically, to define our future. And he paid for it with his own personal fortune.
The summation of his life's work and his final word to us is a profound and direct challenge.
Now you have the power. What will you do with it?
That immense challenge, coupled with the insights from his confession, leaves us with several key, irrefutable takeaways. First, the true immense cost of efficient AC power was paid for by one man's choice to sacrifice billions of dollars.
Second, the exhilarating realization that the small glass rectangle in your hand is the successful completion of the Wardenclyffe Tower, the global nervous system he dreamed of in 1901.
And finally, his severe modern warning about the new electricity, AI, and the absolute necessity of humanity remaining the moral master of the machine.
Lest the mirror reflect back only destruction.
So Tesla gave up billions so the world could have cheap, efficient energy, yet we still delay the inevitable shift to renewables, burning the fuel he explicitly called barbaric.
And given his profound personal sacrifice and his mandate to focus on the unseen forces, energy, frequency, and vibration, we leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over.
What immediate, tangible action, based on his ultimate wisdom regarding energy and frequency, can you apply to challenge the established dogma in your own field or life?
Consider moving away from the material world and focusing instead on the underlying unseen forces and frequencies, be they electrical, psychological, or social, that are truly guiding your progress and your choices.